Okay, so let's start. Today we'll be talking about the navigation. We did a little bit of that before. I want to show you how you can communicate between controllers. So let's create a new project. And again, I will start with single app application because I want to remind you how you can add navigation elements to your application. 9 PPC mobile. I don't need this too. Okay, and we are in business. Just make sure that you can see everything. This projector is weird. Okay, so let's build our simple application. What I will do, I will start with the main storyboard. And I will add a table view, and that will be my navigation part, right? So navigation controller. I can drag it to the storyboard, and you can see that it's adding the navigation controller and the table view. Right? Now let's make some space. Let's rearrange elements in our storyboard. So, make sure that we have everything that we need. Now, this first controller that was there in the beginning should be our detail screen, while the entry point should be the navigation controller. How I can do that? I have to move this arrow, right? Or another option, you can select the navigation controller that you need, and there is somewhere an option is initial view. If you check this, the arrow will jump itself. Okay? Another way of doing it. Okay, let's work a little bit with the table view. We'll follow the same strategy that we used last week, 2 weeks ago. And we'll modify the, sorry, that's not the one. We'll modify the table view. We don't use the dynamic prototypes. We'll use static cells. And for each cell, we'll set some style, right? I will change it to basic this way. Sorry, this way we'll have some titles that we can check. Just want to remind you that you can select different styles, right? You can have style with the detail. You have 2 labels. Then you can have a kind of a subtitle on the bottom, right? So you have few options here. I will select basic, and also you can select the how it's called, the symbol that it's showing on the right, that can tell you if there is more, right? If there is some other information involved, right? So you have few options here, right? You can have a disclosure, which is this little arrow. You can have some icons here, like the information, or just an icon. Let's use the disclosure indicator. Right? Now this cell will be our transition to the second controller, right? So what we'll do, we'll create the segue, right? Right-click on the cell and drag action should trigger this pop-up. Let's use show initially, right? You see the icon here. If you click on it, you'll be able to set the identifier, right? I will set this to show. Now what we have to do. First of all, we want to pass some information from the table view to the second element here, right? To the view controller. To do that, we need to have a class that implements the table view first. Right now, it's a default one. I mean, if I run this application, it will work with the default behaviors, right? But I want to do something more, so I have to create my own controller that will inherit from the table view, right? This is starting just to show you that it's really working. Right? If I click on this one, it moves. Okay, so let's create a class. So I'm going to new, and I want to create a file. And it will be a Cocoa Touch. I will set the subclass first. And it will be UI table view controller as a base class. And I will call this class my table view controller. Right, so you see that this is something that we did before, right? Create. It's my class. I have to change two things. Sorry, before I go there, I will change the font size so you can read it. Always forget about this. I created a file, right? So I went to File, New, and then File. And then I selected the Cocoa Touch. In the next window, you have to select or type in the UI table view as a superclass. So subclass off, right? And then the name of my class is my table view controller. What I will change in this class, at least for now, are two things. Number of sections, I will set to 1. And the next function should return number of rows in a section. And I will change this to 2. I will have 2 options in my application. Now, I will have to go to the storyboard, select my table view controller, and in the identity inspector, I'll start typing the name of the class, which is my table view controller. I'll confirm that. And this way, I created an association between the screen that I have in the storyboard and my class. Right? Now, if I run my application, shouldn't really change much. Still see the title, still can do the transition, right? Okay, so let's go back to the code. Maybe I will just change the title that I have here to show. I remember which transition it is. Okay, I'm going to the table view, I will hide this because I want to show the code. If you scroll through this class, you will see that there are a few methods that are commented out in this template. They do different things. We'll get back to this when we'll be creating a dynamic table, and that will be along with the database, right? But on the bottom, you have a mark navigation, and there is a method here that we'll need. So I will remove the comments around this method. This method is called prepare. It's actually called prepare for segue with a sender, right? But this is the method that is executed when you click on something that triggers the navigation event, right? So you have a segue going from source controller to a destination controller. When this method is called, both controllers exist, right? So the destination controller has been created. The views are not there yet, but the controller itself exists, right? So what you can do, you can recognize, okay, this is the segue that is triggering it. This segue has information about destination, about the controller that we want to go to, and it also has an identifier. Remember that I set identifier for the segue, for the connection that I created. There is only one method, right? And you can have multiple segues going out from the class. So you need to recognize them somehow. You do it based on the identifier. So what we'll do here, we'll say if segue identifier is equal to, I believe it was show, but I have to confirm that. Main storyboard. Yeah, it was show. It has to be spelled exactly like here, right? Okay, going back to main. So if it's equal to show, we can do something. What we'll do? We'll send a string, just a message, right? That we want to display. To be able to display, let's go back to the storyboard. Let's make sure that we have some place to show it, right? So let's use a label. Here is our label. Let's make it big. All right, and make sure that we have a reference in the class. So I'm switching to the assistant editor, and I will create in the view controller, I will create an outlet, right? Text. I will use this outlet to display my message. Now, I told you that when we call the transition, the destination controller exists, but the UI is not created yet, right? So we won't be able to use this element directly. That's why we'll create our own variable. Let's call it message, right? Variable message. It will be optional string, and we'll use this element to communicate. Now, this can be anything, right? If you have more complex data structure, I don't know, an array or some object, right? You can do exactly the same thing. With string, it's fairly easy, right? And you can see right away what's going on. we'll modify viewDidLoad. This is the function that is called when all the views are created, right? So we'll use this function to set value for our text, right? We'll say if, message. Let's use if let statement, right? If let m equals msg, then text dot perfect name, right? Text dot text will be equal m. And we're displaying the message. Else means that it's empty, so text dot text will be equal empty, and this way we'll know that no message was sent, right? Okay, so we have one side of this connection done. Let's go back to the table view controller. We know that this is the connection that we want to trigger, right? Now let's create a variable controller for DST, for destination, shorter, less typing. Segue dot destination as view controller. What I'm doing here, I'm casting, and I'm using exclamation mark here because as is turning it into an optional, right? If this is not, if it's not possible to cast to the specified type, it would set it to nil. But I'm, if this is the proper identifier, I know that this is the proper class for the destination, so I can do it in a safe way with exclamation mark, right? And since I know what it is, est dot message, I can send a message. Ho, 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 no more snow. Message for Toronto, right? Done. Before I show you how it works with this, I will first show you how it works without really setting up the message, right? So I will run this, and you'll see that on the other side, it is really showing as empty, right? It's empty. Now, if we uncomment our message, we got the message, right? Hopefully the weather will get it too. Simple. Yeah, I think so. The funny part is that with this approach, you can create a bi-directional communication. You can, yeah, because what you can do, right? You can create in this class, right? In our destination class, you can have a variable that is your, let's call it listener, right? And the type of this would be, in my case, it will be a view controller, so the source controller. But if you apply all the software engineering techniques, you would use, in Java, it would be interface, right? In here, it would be called how? A delegate, right? You would use a delegate representing certain functionality, right? And your view controller would implement this delegate, right? Specifically, there will be some kind of a function, right? Okay, so I have a listener here. In my source, I can do this. est.listener is equal to self. So I will react to this. Oh, sorry, I messed up the types. This cannot be view controller because that's a self-reference. It has to be my table view controller, right? And then this one won't complain. Save. Save. I think it will wake up and remove this. So the listener is set to my table view controller, right? My table view controller is setting the reference to itself. What can we do? We can define a function. Function doing what? Receive, whatever. It can get a string or a message as a parameter. You can do something with it, right? So for example, what we can do with it? We can take our table view, specifically the first label, and we can set the message and display it in this label. Totally stupid functionality, but it will show you that it works, right? Label one dot text is equal to MSG, right? Having that done, I can go back to my table view controller, checking everything is okay here, saving it, going to the view controller, and in here, I can call the message, right? I can say listener dot what was the name of the function again? I don't remember. Receive, right? Right? We can communicate back and forth. Simple? Quite simple, right? Of course, if you want it to be more flexible, you have to use proper software engineering and design it better than this. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing that I wanted to show you today is using modal windows. Because what happens, let me add here quickly another controller. I want to add a new view controller, so new window. And on this window, I will need a button. And you will see why I need a button. I will use the second cell from this table. Go to the modal, right? To my second table. Right, and I will use show modally. Different icon and different behavior. Let's run this and let's see what's the difference. If I go through the first one, I have the navigation bar, right? It slides from the side. That's the default animation. If I click on the modal, what happens? Why it's not working? Hello. It should. Now it works. I don't know what happened. It slides from the bottom. That's just animation. Doesn't really matter, right? But no way to close it. Because modal controllers are responsible for closing action itself, right? Now you can do it in many different ways. You can add the navigation bar and then add the closing action there. Or, as I did, you can add a button. This button will be a close button, or OK button, or cancel button, whatever, right? When do you use modal windows? When you want to display a message and then let user dismiss the message or acknowledge that they receive the message, right? So I will have a close button. I will make it bigger so it's easier to tap it. And I will add some background. That's my button. I'm not a designer, right? To add action to the button, I'm going to Assistant Editor, and then I realize, oopsie, this is the wrong class. It's UI view controller. I cannot edit. What happened? Well, I added a view to my storyboard, but I didn't create a class for it, right? So let's do it right now. New file, Coco Touch. Next. In this case, my base class will be different. It will be UI view controller. And I will call it mobile, not mobile, but modal view controller. Okay. Create. I have to go to the storyboard and make sure that I'm connected where I should be connected, right? So I select this new view, and I set class. If you're working with the assistant editor, you should see your class displayed here when you select the view from the storyboard, right? So what I need to do, I need to add, let's make some space here. I need to add some behavior to this button. So I do the drag action. It's not outlet that I want to create, but action, right? So I have to change this. And I will create an action that I will call dismiss. Just to have a better view, I will switch to this. Actually not the best name because I just override the default behavior. Luckily, I misspelled the name. Okay, let's fix that. Okay, because we shouldn't really use this as a name. So I will disconnect my function. I'm going back to the storyboard, and I will find dismiss, and I will remove the connection. Now I will go back to the model, and I will change the name. Finish. Okay, and I will reconnect. All right, so I will take the button, will find my function, is somewhere there, and I will reconnect. All right, this way we are not hiding any system functionality, right? Not overriding it. But what we have to do, and you can guess that right now, we have to call function dismiss. This function has two parameters. First parameter is a Boolean telling if you want to animate this dismissal or not, right? It should slide back down or not. Let's say we like the animation. The second one, called completion, is what? What can it be, looking at this signature? Sorry? Yeah, you can call that, right? A callback function. Basically, you can put the code that will be triggered when we click on the button, right? We dismiss the window. It's in a form of closure, right? So you don't have to create a function. You can simply implement a block of a code here, like anonymous function in JavaScript, right? To lambda. So you can either refer to the function if you have a function. What function should it be? The function that does not have any parameters, right? This brackets are empty, and then the arrow points to void, which means that this function does not return anything, right? So we can use and close. You can do anything you want here, right? Really. We won't be doing anything. But for example, if your model is, let's say, showing a license, what you can do, you can check the flag, right, saying that user did accept the license or did not accept the license, right? And you can, again, you can have communication at that point with the previous controller. Yeah. So if we save this, we run this. Model, close, working. Right, so right now you can use both. You can use the show and model, and also you can have communication between controllers that will be useful in your project. All right. And I will stop the recording right now, and I will let you